In today's video, we're going to be building a spectacular brand new interchange, and we're going to be finishing the Nanpu Bridge near Cape Moments downtown. I'll be using Shanghai's Nanpu Bridge as inspiration for this design, and I'll show you how I'm going to be blending it into the surrounding environment. This city is currently facing high resource costs, and it seems businesses are having to import pricier goods due to lack of local manufacturing. So the additional goal today is to see if we can solve that issue. We'll focus on creating some great looking industry builds, both spawnable and signature buildings, and hopefully we'll get things running a little bit more smoothly. Let's crack on. So we've had a few larger builds in the city over the past few weeks. We've obviously got our university build on the last episode, that's in the bottom left hand of the corner. We've done really all the sports campus part of that, which is pretty cool. On the right hand side you can see the racetrack, Clovis County racetrack, and that is looking pretty cool as well, and I think it's a nice little build up against the beach. I'm really happy with that one. So today's focus, we're going to be looking at that big island up on the top right hand corner, and you can probably see, if you squint and look really close, you can see a bridge running over from the downtown. So that's what we're going to be connecting, and it should give us a direct route to a lot of our population and a lot of our commercial. So I went ahead and just cleared the island off, got rid of all the trees, got rid of all the buildings that were there already. So the buildings that we had there previously were our tram depots and our train depots. We're going to have to rebuild that at some point. They were just a temporary location, but that'll be filed away in the to-do list. So as you can see, what we're doing here is we're just using semicircles, and we're just bringing the height down as we go around. So a really unique element of this design is obviously the circular shape, but also the fact that it stacks. You know, we're going to be running the highway directly under the levels above. Now you guys are very much seeing the shortened version of this. It did take a little bit of trial and error, really, just to kind of work out just exactly how it works. Now obviously I'll be using as many tools as I have at my disposal, but the sad thing is there wasn't any Street View on Google Maps, so it was pretty difficult trying to piece it together with Google Maps and Google Earth, but we managed in the end. The toughest bit, really more than anything else, was just working out the ramps and exactly what ramp leads off what elevated section. Pretty confusing, not gonna lie, but we did kind of manage to get there in the end. Unfortunately, I don't really have any great tips to share on this one. It is really just trial and error and working it out. Now obviously this is not going to do, so we have to get that deleted and get that redrawn. And the nice thing is that there wasn't too much of that in the build. Most things went in pretty much the way they should. The challenge was, as I say, just working exactly what was going to be coming out of what. But once we kind of get the connections coming off the highway, the rest of it, it's just a case of just working out how the ramps are going to look nice and smooth, and that's all pretty straightforward. We've done it a million times on the channel before. Now as per usual, if the ramps aren't looking good, if there's a weird curve on it or whatever, we're either just going to delete it, redo it, or we'll cut a section out and just try and change the angle. And again, the ramps we can take off the lower section and build them up, or if it makes sense, we take it off the higher section and we kind of build them down towards the ground. But those two roads going straight out, you know, to that highway below, they were probably the trickiest, and that's pretty much them set. They just need to be connected now. So I reckon this is another big milestone for the city. We've obviously had that bridge for quite a while, you know, before we even started downtown, and really I think getting it connected to the other side of the water is a big deal. I've got big plans for this island. I'm going to be working on it just as soon as I finish this video. It's definitely going to be a bit of an ambitious build, so I'm just hoping I'm going to be able to pull it off, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Now that ramp is a 2-lane one. Realistically, it just needed to be downgraded to a 1, but I'll probably come back and do that later on. Although it's a 2-lane in the real life one, I hadn't put the extra lane in on the ground, so you know, it kind of comes off as a 1-lane, expands into 2, and then because the traffic was jamming on merge, then I kind of downgraded it to a 1 as well. So I got an extra lane on that, really, that does absolutely nothing at all. So definitely need to come back and get that sorted. But priority at this stage of the game is really just to get the ramps in, make sure everything's working, and then we can move on to the next part of the build. Now this episode actually almost never happened. I didn't start off the day thinking I'm going to be finishing off this bridge, but it was more out of necessity more than anything else. The build that I've got planned next, of course, it's going to need some road connections, and it didn't really make sense just using the little tunnel that was there, because ultimately I was going to be deleting that anyway to accommodate what's coming next. Now this had to be done at some stage, so I thought, what the heck, I'll do it now, we'll crack on and we'll get it sorted. It does look pretty mental, doesn't it? Hey, so we're obviously going to have to get that sorted, and really here's just going to be the first time that I'm going to be using Move It. So there should just be a case of picking a few nodes and a few segments. We'll just raise the ones above and we'll just lower the ones below, and providing we can get it relatively smooth in terms of the drop on elevation or the rise in elevation, then I'm going to be pretty happy with that. So I'll just take a few fine adjustments, and nothing too difficult about this part either, just a case of selecting it, use page up and page down, and as long as we've got space to fit some traffic through there, I'm going to roll with that. So in terms of the main interchange road build, that is pretty much that done. All that's left to do now is just to complete the ramps that we have sticking out and really just make sure that it doesn't look like junk. There'll be a few changes between this one and the real life one, but I definitely wanted to get all of the different road connections hooked up, and it's just going to expand into this road level or ground level highway. It's a really cool distributor for all the traffic that's going to be coming through it. Now of course we've got plenty of pillars that are going through road, so we'll just delete all of them, and where we think it's maybe necessary, if there's a really large gap that doesn't have a pillar, we'll just shift one in place, and again we'll just use move it and we'll just shift that one in. Now below there, I wanted that to be a single intersection, so I'm just going to use the roundabout trick and we'll just pull the highways back in, delete the roundabout, and we should have one single intersection down there. Now I reckon we'll get rid of that pillar of course, and we'll also stick some traffic lights on there as well. I wouldn't imagine that intersection would get a huge amount of traffic, but yeah, I think traffic lights kind of make sense. And that's pretty much the main build for the intersection part of it. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's a great start to the episode. So now it's time to crack on with our industry build. So the plan of action here now is to get some of the bigger buildings in place. Also, once I'm doing that, I kind of want to settle on a local road network, for our industry build as well. And really down here, I just want short roads where you have a really tight space to work under here, and I'm going to have plenty of development directly under the bridges as well. You'd expect all of that space to be used. You will often see on these large ramps on highways that you get a lot of parking underneath, especially if it's a busier area, near a downtown or an industrial district. So I'm going to be running with that. Now, although I'm plopping these buildings along the waterfront, the majority of this build, apart from obviously the big warehouses and signature buildings that we're going to be using, I am going to be using quite a lot of spawnable, vanilla looking assets, and that's something that I don't really do an awful lot in my builds, but it will fit the build down here. It should look good, and what we're going to do is we're really going to spend quite a bit of time to really just mesh it all together with a ton of surfaces, and we want to get rid of all the grass basically. So I'm going to use a couple of these specialized industry buildings, the first of which is going to be the switch on factory. This is going to give us +2 industrial efficiency, which is citywide, and it's going to give us +1 college graduation, and again that'll be a citywide benefit as well. Now of course those are nice benefits, but more than anything else it really fills up a big part of the area and it breaks up the monotony, and it really is the monotony of the industrial spawnable buildings. We were also running out of sewage treatment capacity, so I managed to slot that in the build there as well. And again, we're going to have a couple of big car parks down here, which you would expect given the size of the facilities, right? A few more of the non-functional warehouse assets, of course, will fit the bill. We'll be adding a few more on top of that as well. I think it does also make sense. And again, we just offset that and fill the little gaps with the spawnable stuff. The next big signature building I'm going to be adding in here is going to be the vehicle factory. Now again, this one's going to give us some city-wide benefits. It's going to be +2 industrial efficiency, and it's going to give us an extra 10% oil deposits city-wide. Oil deposits probably don't matter so much anyway. We do obviously have our oil facility build, but we use mods and we just created our own oil deposits anyway. So yeah, not too much of a benefit that one, but I'll take the +2 industrial efficiency. Although this is obviously beside the water, it's never really my intention to make it a big port build or anything like that, but I am going to add a little bit of a quay wall here, and I think we can maybe keep some options open in terms of detailing or maybe some more waterside development, but we'll see. But for now, just a super basic straight quay wall is all I'm going to be doing today. Now we can have a little look at the traffic moving finally on this interchange, and that does look pretty mental, doesn't it? And it's only going to get busier. I can't wait until it's absolutely rammed full of traffic. It'll be so cool to look at it. One thing I am going to be doing, and you can maybe just see that on the slightly lower section, is that the traffic merge was going to be a problem there, so I did just bump that down to one lane, and that's the ramp I was speaking about earlier on. That needs to go down to one lane in its entirety. So with this big industrial employer in place, I do want to kind of make sure that it kind of looks the part, and what I'm going to be doing is opening a huge facility, storage facility for all the cars that we're producing here. So I'm just going to use the line tool, make sure that the variation tab or whatever button is selected, and we'll get plenty of different colours on here, and we're just going to line up. So I'm going to be using different types of cars here. I don't want everything looking exactly the same. We'll put in a few vans and all the rest of it as well, and try and get a little bit of different shapes and different sizes going on, as well as the different colours. Now these are props, of course. They're not actually doing anything other than adding a bit of visual value to the build. We're not going to be keeping it on the grass. We will add a surface here, and the surface is really just going to be the first part of the detailing. Now I do want to plug this little gap up here as well, and that will give us a bit of a barrier to the highway as well, which I think kind of makes sense. Now all the different surfaces and textures are really important in an industry build. We don't want grass everywhere, it doesn't make sense. That's what we're going to focus on just now. So the way to go when we're adding these surfaces is to try and get a little bit of variation just as much as we can. Now there's only so much variation that you're going to get when you're essentially filling it all in grey, but what I am looking to try and avoid is to have anything looking too uniform. So where we have an existing surface, whether it's concrete, asphalt or whatever it is, I do want to keep the initial ones that come with the building. Where we see any gaps, whether that be between the highway or behind the building or between the building or even on the main mesh itself, we're either going to just extend the surface that's there already, or we're just going to fill the gap with a new one. It is a time consuming job, and frankly it can be a bit boring once you've been doing it for quite a while, if it's a big build. But it's one of these things, I think, certainly for industry, that you kind of need to do. You can mask it, of course, with a little bit of vegetation, but you probably don't want too much if it's a pretty dense build. If you are having a more sort of natural or like rural, like a countryside industrial development, then obviously that makes sense. You would have it much more spaced out. But something like this, it's going to be, pretty much inner city, you definitely want to have it, looking really concrete and grey. Now on every video I do, I always make a point of just taking a minute just to say thank you very much for watching, and also special thank you to everybody who supports on Patreon and YouTube members, of course, as well. So thank you very much to these legends that go above and beyond. It's truly appreciated, it really is, guys. If any of you guys want to get involved, supporting the channel, you can do. Links are in the description. I would also like to say, if you guys want to get involved in the future of any of the builds, jump on a Discord, let us know your ideas. I do have a specific section for any build ideas that you guys have got and you want to see in the build. And also, in addition to that, it's a great place to share what you're building as well. It's always cool to kind of get a bit of feedback, and you can maybe get some ideas from what everybody else is up to as well. And you should see some of the pictures in Discords. People are making some great stuff, so come in and say hello. Don't be a stranger. Now you may be watching this thinking everything's looking pretty plain. Well, that's absolutely the case, yeah, 100%. We are just putting the surfaces in place first, so what we'll be doing is we will be detailing this, and everything that's kind of looking a bit plain or looking like it's a big gap, we're going to be filling all of that stuff. Now, being an industrial build, we have plenty of options. There's a ton of decals that we can use, and mostly it will be just kind of making it look a little bit dirty, but there's a ton of props that you can use in industry as well. We'll be getting onto that in just a minute or two. So if you guys have been following along in the series, and I think we are now up to episode 39, you'll know that I've kind of neglected industry. So we've got a few pockets here and there. We've got a little bit there just beside the downtown. We've got a bit tucked in beside the subway rail yard as well. And of course, right from episode 2, we've got the shipyard as well. And that's pretty much it. So this is actually a pretty decent sized expansion of the industry in the city, and I'm kind of hoping it will make a difference, and we'll check out at the end and see if we still get those error messages. The last little job on this one, I just wanted to extend out the quay wall a little bit. Again, nothing fancy, just a pretty straight quay wall, and then we could maybe make a little park area potentially under the bridge as well. Just kind of give a little bit of levity, I guess, to some of the workers. They can see a little bit of grass and a little bit of trees and whatnot, and hopefully can maybe chill out and relax and kind of get away from their industrial jobs and sit by the water, you know. So now I'm happy to say we can crack on with a bit of detailing. I did create a little bit of a beach. I'm not going to show all of that. It's been a ton of videos already, so, go go and find them if you don't know how to make beaches. I'll not be doing another one. But I reckon in this video we're really going to make the most of the vehicle prop mod. I think in this type of build it does make sense to have plenty of vehicles. You would absolutely expect them to see them anyway, but when we have these really big gaps and these really big spaces where we've kind of filled up with concrete, you know, we need something that's realistic to kind of fill it, and obviously you would expect these vehicles to be here. It certainly makes things an awful lot easier for me using these things, and we haven't really introduced them to the build up until very recently. I think it was just a couple of episodes ago I think we started using some custom assets and custom props and whatnot, and it really has opened up quite a lot more opportunities to try and get much better filled spaces. I definitely want everything sort of fenced off and really get that sort of prop work in that you would expect to see. So, you know, changes between plots and gaps between roads and all the rest of it, you know, has to be filled. Now and again, I do want to introduce a little bit of uniformity. I reckon that uniformity within the vehicle colours really does give us that look that it is all one company, perhaps, you know, in a single plot. Now down at a car factory, I wanted to add a little bit of a scene here, and I'm going to create some custom cranes, some mobile cranes. I'm going to use the road maintenance vehicle, we're going to stack them, and the way that works is that it's got multiple wheels, and we're going to give that sort of look that it's one of these big cranes. And I think it looks pretty good, to be honest with you, you know, from a distance at least anyway. I think with the cranes we just want to get them all recoloured, and that striking yellow looks pretty nice, and it certainly makes it stand out against the skyline. Now I reckon that the car factory has had some logistics issues and it's had a surplus of containers, so somebody's come up with a bright idea of just taking over the car park, using that as the space, and then they'll try and load up the trucks from that best they can. So we're just going to shift some of the containers up and we're going to float them in mid-air. Now you might notice at the very end in the cinematics that some of them are missing, and I thought perhaps it was on me that I maybe forgot to lock the elevation on them, but I did double check on the footage and the elevation was in fact locked, so I don't know what happened to them, but I'll need to go back and redo them most likely. So I reckon this will be a pretty good time for a time lapse, and there's going to be a ton of prop work, loads more vehicles, loads of decals. We're really going to dirty the place up a little bit and give it that sort of worn look. So I will leave it with you and I'll catch up with you in a few minutes. So now we can take a few minutes to review the build and really just have a look at the cinematics as well, because it always looks good at the end, doesn't it, right? So I thought I'd start with a shot of the full bridge. That bridge, the other side of the water there, that's pretty much based on the one in New Orleans. It's changed quite a bit for me to fit it in the city. And then of course, the subject of today's build, and this is the big bridge interchange, which is found in Shanghai. I think this shot really gives you a good idea of the size of the infrastructure and the size of the ramps that are required to accommodate it. Now remember, these ramps are large, but they're not taken from the top level. You know, it's came down, I think 20 meters if I remember correctly, so still pretty substantial, and that's even with the reduction in the height. I reckon this interchange will absolutely eat traffic all day long, completely free flowing of course until it hits the highway on the ground floor, where it has to deal with whatever traffic is going on, whether it's a crossroad or whether it's going to continue up the highway. I did enjoy making them little cranes there, they look pretty cool, nice little addition, and again, plenty of prop work here and vehicle work to really just give it at least the impression of life and the overall feel that it is a busy, bustling industrial area. I quite like the idea of creating fleets of vehicles, you know, where the colours are the same. I think it does make sense, and probably something I'll do a wee bit more of, because I usually chop and change the colours for a bit of variation. This is an entirely satisfying shot with the traffic moving, do enjoy that very much. Now I drew your attention to an error message that we were getting dotted around the map in relation to some of our commercial assets, and that was the high resources cost. So I really wanted to find out whether or not adding a ton of industry and some signature industry buildings would actually have an impact on that, and it looks like it partially has. Most of those notifications are gone from the map, but not all of them. Now I wouldn't be surprised at the very least if it's just a case of adding more industry, so although we have added quite a lot, I have really starved the city from that type of build. So the next video might take a little while to put up. I think it's going to take me quite a bit of time. I'm not entirely sure exactly how long, and yeah, it's going to be one of those builds really, isn't it, where I might be at it a while. But in the meantime, make sure you go check out the links in the description, have a look at some of these videos, and take care of yourselves. See you in the next one.